Well, thank you guys for coming. I had no idea what to expect. They said there might be 5 people or there might be 500. So it's really hard to kind of create a presentation for 5 or 500. So we'll keep it pretty intimate, although we're really widespread here. We're going to talk a little bit today about people and culture and how to keep your people. I'm curious, just from the group, does everyone have employees? Who has more than 10 employees? More than 10, and then you guys have fewer than 10 employees? Okay, great. Well, I thought I'd start off and introduce myself. I feel like you should know a little bit about me before you trust me and believe in what I have to say. So a little reiteration from what was just said. So I grew up in a suburb of Chicago. I was in Schaumburg, Illinois. And it always makes me laugh when people don't want to hire city kids because city kids aren't farm kids. And I promise you that some city kids are farm kids, and all we want to do is grow up and live on a farm. I grew up as a golf caddy. My parents learned about the scholarship that would get you to college, and they made my brother do it. And so then when I turned 12, I got to start caddying too. So I grew up on Medina Country Club, which if anybody follows golf, it's a really super duper fancy golf club. Michael Jordan was on the waiting list for like 10 years to be a member. But I was not fancy, so I just hauled everybody's bags around. But that got me a full ride scholarship to Purdue. I was an accounting major for about 3 minutes before I realized that that was not my world at all. So I switched over to animal science. I focused on beef and equine, showed horses. Everything in my world was horses and cows. Truthfully, I never thought I'd work with pigs ever. But then I grew up and learned that that's where the money really is. So it was a good decision. When I graduated, this is awful. Sorry. Yeah, it's a little loud. Is there a volume on this thing? Okay. So when I graduated, as mentioned, I enlisted in the United States Air Force. I was a heavy equipment diesel mechanic because I was going to have a farm one day, and I was going to have horses, and I needed to know how to fix my own tractors because this was brilliant 21-year-old thinking, right? It wasn't until much later that I realized that I had no money, no land, or horses, so my dream of my giant horse farm was probably far-fetched. But while serving, I did get 2 master's degrees, one in HR development, so people development, and one in management and leadership. When I graduated, I got a job as a third-party headhunter. I was just recruiting people for the diesel truck industry. Shortly thereafter, I got another job in a trucking company, hiring drivers and being part of their safety program. And then a couple years after that, I got recruited by the Maschhoffs to come start their DOT safety program. It was super awesome. They had like Post-it notes that said Bob referred Joe, and that was it. So I had a lot of work to do to get them up to speed. And long story short, here I am, 8 years later. I am Associate Director for HR. We oversee everything from recruiting all the way through the life cycle, investigations, leadership development, growth opportunities, terminations, just everything in the middle is what we do. So what I really focus on is leadership development and growth and helping people get the best out of their people. I joke around that I'm always teaching operations guys how to be people. That's my job. So that's me in a nutshell. I have 2 little boys, Colson and Levi. They are 7 and 10. And that big guy, that's my fiance. We're getting married in New Orleans in September. So we're super excited about that. We like to do stuff outside and just have fun. So a little bit about Maschhoffs. So we are 100% owned by the 5th generation. We operate in 9 states. We have 215,000 sows, about 1,200 employees. 750 of those are in my world and direct HR care. So that's what we do. We're headquartered in Carlisle, Illinois. We sell an estimated 5 million market hogs every year. So we're pretty big, pretty big. But today we're going to talk about how to keep your people and how to rethink the idea of having employees. It's really hard when somebody says you have 45 minutes to talk about keeping people because I could talk to you for 45 hours about it. And when I put this together, I thought, well, shoot, this is either going to take me 9 minutes or an hour and a half. So I'm going to have to really figure out what to say here. So I landed on 3 simple ideas to kind of bring some focus to it. And those are purpose, empowerment, and empathy. So first things first, when you get new people, it is absolutely paramount that we get them started off on the right foot. I always call it day 1 care for humans. We put all of this time and energy into getting our piglets a good start and getting them dry and warm and a full belly and colostrum. But then sometimes we tend to get people in the door and we're so busy and it's a wean day or we've got a whole bunch of farrowing happening and we're just way too busy, so we just kind of shove people in and say, go figure it out. Bob over here will teach you and we'll show you what to do. But it's really important to be ready for that person. Have something with their name on it. Who here, does everybody shower into their barns here or their employees shower in? Okay, that is weird. That is really super weird. And when you're calling a new person and telling them to come in and they've never been in a pig farm and we're like, all right, you're going to have to take your clothes off and get wet and then put on some strange underwear, okay? Everybody good with that? That's weird. So I always spend a ton of time explaining biosecurity and why it's important and how this little eraser tip of PED can infect 2 football fields worth of water, and it's really important. And then we talk about the shower process, and there's videos out online that you can use as references, but we talk really in depth about, okay, it's like a camping place, right? And you're going to undress over here, and then you're going to walk through. But don't skim over that. Give them all the ins and outs of the shower because it's weird, and people don't, we're so used to it that it's not, but new people freak out about that a lot. Always have clothes ready for them. Nothing is more uncomfortable than getting out of this really weird experience and then there's nothing for you to put on and you're dripping and you don't know what to do and somebody's got to come and like go like this and hand you a pair of socks or underwear. So just be absolutely ready for them. If you've got training logs or anything that you can write their name on, have that written. Make it look like you thought about them getting there and that you showed up. I suggest to a lot of managers not to have their new people start at the same time as everyone else, just because there's all the hustle and bustle of everyone else trying to get through the showers, get clocked in, drink all their coffee, say hello, talk about the weekend, that new people tend to just feel glazed over. So I usually suggest have them start about an hour later than everybody else, so that way you as the managers can relax a little bit and be comfortable and ready for them to show up. And for gosh sakes, if it's really crazy busy, still just make the priority to sit in the office and meet the person first, unless there's a major explosion. And then find a designated person to come in, because new people will never feel less wanted than if they're just sitting in a front office by themselves waiting for somebody to come get them. So purpose. Talk about your story. You know, pig farming isn't the sexiest thing in the world, right? It's dirty, it's cold, it's smelly, it's hard work. There's a lot of things to turn somebody off about pig farming, but it's really noble. And all of our businesses have a noble story. All of our farms have a story to tell of what we do for a living. So, you know, we've got one particular farm that feeds about 250,000 people every year. So we capitalize on that, and we tell people. Our Oklahoma pods, every single person that comes to work is technically feeding 30,000 people in a year. So we really talk about that story. We talk about the industry as a whole and how noble of a profession it is. We try and dispel as many rumors as we can about enclosed pig farming and why we don't allow people and cameras and all those things into our farms. And we teach people about the big picture, the big story about what they're doing. I Googled yesterday, just in preparation of this, for what employees want, because you know I always want a little validation that what I'm saying is accurate. And so I Googled just the words, what do employees want? And the first thing that came up that says, without a sense of purpose, it's difficult for employees to connect with their work and their company. Working with a sense of purpose boosts employee motivation, productivity, morale, and overall job satisfaction. So I felt really good that I was validated because I already had this slide made and sent over. So tell your story. Make sure that people know what they're doing. Always share the purpose. Especially, people ask a lot, you know, how do we deal with young people? Because young people are so different and how they work is so different. I don't like to use the term millennials because we've made that kind of a negative connotation, but young people no longer just want to go to work every day and slave away for 10 hours and go home and go to bed. Young people want to have purpose and they want to be a part of something and something bigger than themselves. So always share that. These are a lot of the words that come up when you ask people what drives them to go to work every day. So culture, values, products, ideas. Any questions so far? Please stop, raise your hand if you have any along the way. So empowerment. Empowerment is something that we all need to work on doing better. I, as a leader, always need to work on it better as well. It's really hard to delegate and give people things to do and let them go. We need to rethink how we're treating our people. So there's kind of an old school way, especially in our industry and in a lot of the ag industry. So on the left, I have examples of how kind of the old school thinking that we've lived with, and a new way to think of. So know your place, keep your head down. People aren't going to be good with that. They want to network. They want to explore the company. They want to know what different opportunities they have available to them. Focus on the job you were hired to do. Your ideas won't work. Rethink that. Explain to people why they're vital to the business strategy, why we welcome their ideas. Being in my role, I've done the same things for so many years, and now that I have a team of 7, they come at me with very different ideas from what we've always done. And, you know, even as a person who teaches this stuff, I have to stop and remind myself, okay, just because we always did it this way doesn't mean that their way isn't better. And a lot of times they're usually a lot smarter than me, and they come up with better stuff. Low peer-to-peer interaction and a lack of community. That's not going to work these days either. People want to feel bonded. They want to feel like they're part of a work family, like they've got friends at work that they can bond with. Sink or swim, figure it out yourself expectations. So bringing people in the door and saying, hey, it's a wean day, the truck's out back and it's blowing up and I got to run, go hang out with Bob, he's going to show you the ropes. That's not going to work. These folks need explicit career development and pathing conversations. How are you going to get to a next level? How are you going to become a farm manager? How are you going to become a production manager? Everyone that comes to the Maschhoffs wants to drive the white truck, so we got to teach them all how to get to the spot where they're driving the white truck. And then putting them with managers who just need to receive headcount. I know, especially in our business, it's hard to find people. It's really hard. In fact, Diane asked me to talk about finding people, and I had to turn her down because I'm like, 1, I haven't figured out that secret, and 2, I don't want to give away the one secret I have found. So people are hard to find, right? It's nearly impossible. So when we do find them, we need to put them with managers who are going to onboard them, who are going to give them opportunity and are going to treat them right. We do a lot of figuring out which one of our managers don't treat them right, and then we focus our time on teaching them these very things. So role and contribution, helping people to really understand exactly what it is they're doing. I went out to a barbecue that we were having at one of our farms, and at this particular barbecue we had 3 or 4 guys from Belleville, Illinois, which is kind of in between us and St. Louis. Belleville is not farming community whatsoever. And these folks were here, and they were temporary power washers. So we were struggling to find people who could power wash, so we just called the temp agency, and they sent some folks over. And these guys really kind of struggled with showing up. They struggled with doing stuff once they showed up. They struggled with leaving before they finished doing the stuff they were struggling to do. You guys all know those people. And so I was out there at this barbecue. These 4 gentlemen were sitting at the table and eating their barbecue, and I sat down with them, and I was like, hey, I'm like, so what is it that you guys do? You know, I played kind of dumb, and they were telling me about it, and I was just, you know, it's really exciting. I'm like, you're our power washers? And I spent probably 25 minutes talking to them about how incredibly, ridiculously important it was that they cleaned every inch of these barns, and back to the PED, and the little tiny speck of it will infect the whole farm, and will be out so much money, and that these guys are really the most important people on the team right now. And they sat there and they just ate it up. And they were like, really? It just feels like we're in wetsuits all day, like scrubbing things. And so, long story short, we had this conversation. They were very excited. And one of them actually applied to be a full-time employee with us. Another 2 of them started showing up and actually power washing. And really all that they needed was to understand why this really sucky job that they were doing was really super important. So once they understood that, they put a lot more effort and time into it. One guy who was hopeless, he went away, but the other 3 were definitely success stories. So to swear off making mistakes is very easy. All you have to do is swear off having ideas. It's really super extra important that anytime your employees come to you guys with ideas and ways to make it better, that we don't just respond with, oh, we tried that, it doesn't work, it's not going to work. I always tell my managers, humor them, even if you know it's not going to work, as long as it's not going to create a huge, giant problem, let them try it. Because 1, they'll learn better for themselves why it doesn't work. If you just tell them no, then they'll grumble at you and gripe and just be pissed off that nobody listened to them all day, right? But if we let people try and we let them make things better, we might realize that just because it didn't work before, maybe now it will work when we implement it in a different way. The person also found that we trusted them and we cared about what they had to say, and that we believed in them. So it's really important to let people make mistakes, let them learn, let them come up with ideas. Who wakes up in the morning and says, gosh, I really hope I suck at work today, and I hope my boss is really mad at me when I leave, and all my coworkers think I really suck? Does anybody wake up like that? Nobody? Nope, not one person? So neither do our people, right? They don't wake up in the morning and go, gosh, I just hope I have the worst day today. I hope everybody just thinks I'm terrible. So keep that in perspective. When people do make mistakes or when they put themselves out there to try something, they're probably going to be harder on themselves in the end if it doesn't work out than we could ever be. So give them a chance. So the third thing, empathy. So I always kind of joke around that empathy is the new black. What leaders can do to build trust. So in a survey down at the bottom, a Connexa Employee Engagement Index Score survey, manager competence, 69% will help build trust. 78% say integrity. But 79% of people who responded to that said that empathy will help build trust. It's the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. Trust can make or break a marriage, a company, or a country, really. High trust organizations outperform low trust organizations on ROI by more than 280%. It's a lot. A team that doesn't trust each other is really just a group of individuals that work together on tasks. So think about that. Think about your own groups of employees and think about your teams that you have that are really connected and working together and trust each other and have each other's backs and how they work as opposed to your teams that are just some people doing tasks together. Understand how life contributes to work performance. So those are pretty hard to see probably. So these are handwritten notes by people who responded to a survey of what struggles do you have outside of work. So I'll read them to you. The first one says middle of the night feedings, super tired after second child, marital struggles. Struggles with a son with depression. I'm struggling still with the death of my husband. My mammogram results were not good. I am unhappy with my weight and lack of exercise, and I need to make more money. So who's ever heard that term, you need to find work-life balance? Has anybody ever heard that term? Okay, I absolutely violently squashed that term, and I think it's not even a real thing anymore. It's really more about work-life integration. We're no longer a society where people just feel lucky to have a job. People are no longer willing to give up their personal lives just to go to work. Has anybody seen that with their people? That it's becoming much more of an integration? What we can do is we can complain about the good old days. We can complain about how we just wish that all these entitled little people would come to work and work really hard for 12 hours a day. Or we can decide that society is changing and we have to change as well. When you look at those things too, it's important to keep in mind, in this business especially, sometimes coming to work is the best part of their life. Sometimes it's the best part of their day. People who are struggling with things at home, sometimes come to work to get away from it. So if we can make that place warm and inviting, where we understand, where we value their home life, then they won't want to leave, right? They'll want to keep coming. If we make it a place where we understand that sometimes life happens and we're going to let you go take care of your things in life instead of being so worried about what time you punched in and what time you punched out and whether or not the work got done. Think about it. Has anybody here ever had a day when they've got so much stuff going on at home? They've got to get the kids to this, they've got to pick up the groceries, they've got to go make the Valentine's Day box for the kindergartner, they've got to do all these things, right? So what are we thinking about when we're at work? Are we thinking about we need to process these pigs and we need to be really careful with our scalpels and not cut our fingers off and we need to not have, right? Are we thinking about that, or are we thinking about, gosh, I need to get home and I need to be home by 3:47 so that I can get this kid over to basketball practice so that I can... So we're taking all of the focus off of that work. So we're getting less work done. we're opening ourselves up for risk of injury and other things because we're not concentrating on what we're doing. And we have people who are totally stressed out at work. When we could believe that empathy is the new black, and we could figure out how to integrate work and life and take some of that stress off of people so that when they do come to work, they're ready to go. They've got everything handled at home, and they're ready to focus on what they need to do here and be productive. Does that make sense? We do a lot of encouraging around work schedules. So, you know, we all have to be here at 4:30 in the morning, and we all have to stay until 3:30 in the afternoon, and we all have to go sit at lunch at the same times. And does anybody know people who run their farms like that, where we're all in, all out, it all has to be the same? There's a lot of people that run their farms that way in my business, and I'm always asking them why. Who says that all 14 people need to be there for the wean truck? Do they really all need to be there for the wean truck? And because the wean truck comes at this time on a Tuesday, do they all have to be there at that same time on Wednesday? Because there is no wean truck. And, oh, you've got a mom who's applying that can't afford childcare because working in a pig barn isn't the most money-making opportunity that we've all seen. So she can't afford childcare, so she needs to get her kids on the school bus at 7:15, and she needs to be back home by 3:15. Can she not give you an amazing amount of work in the middle and really appreciate that she has a job that's going to allow her to get her kids on the bus and pick her kids up off the bus? So keep those things in mind as you're working with people and you're scheduling them. You know, is it about rules or is it about results? It's one of my most favorite sayings that I ask people all the time. And they always think because I'm HR that I'm like the keeper of all of these rules, and I don't understand who made half of these rules. Anybody heard the term invisible handcuffs? Have you guys heard that? My people have all of these invisible handcuffs everywhere, and I have no idea where they came from. And I really want to figure out who these rules gods are so that I can go and ask them, you know, why did you make that particular rule? For example, and this kind of leads into empowerment as well, we just created a training farm down in Oklahoma. We hired this, well, we just promoted this amazing woman who's worked for us for a zillion years, and she knows every aspect of breeding, and she knows every aspect of farrowing. She's super warm hug lady that's going to welcome everybody in and make them feel great. And we had her help us build this training program from the ground up. And, you know, she's going to do all the interviewing and all of the training for these employees and determine based on their personalities and how they work, where we're going to put them and what farm they're going to go to. And so we gave her, you know, some timelines and some potential interview questions and all of this stuff, right, to help her build her program, which we very clearly said this is your program to go build. And we trust you, and you're smart, and you can do it. So after we've done this for a few weeks, I fly down to Oklahoma, and I sit through the interview process with her. And so we interview the person, and we go through the biosecurity, the shower video, because showering's weird. And we talk all through that, and we get the person out to the farm and showered in, and they walk all the way through the farm, and we do all these things. And we get back, and we sit down, and Nancy grabs her interview sheet, and she says, so, tell me what experience you have working with pigs. And I'm like, it feels a little weird. Like, shouldn't we have done that already? And then she asks another question, and she's like, tell me about your leadership experience, if any. And then she asked the third question and the fourth question. I'm like, gosh, these sound like my phone screen questions that we ask people, you know, in the very beginning. So after the person left, and Nancy was clearly uncomfortable. She felt awkward asking these out-of-place questions, right? So the person leaves, and I go and I sit back down with her, and I'm like, hey, Nancy, I'm like, what's up with the interview questions? They felt like they were a little out of order, and maybe those should have been at the beginning. And she said, well, those are the questions you gave me, so that's just what I've been using. I was like, well, but they're at the end, and those are beginning questions, and you clearly thought that they felt awkward because you were awkward asking them. She's like, well, yeah, it felt totally strange asking these questions at this point of the interview. So I'm like, well, why didn't you change it? She said, well, because that's what you gave me. But it's yours. So that's just an example of, you know, we very specifically said this is yours to go do, make or break, however you want it to be, but there was still that invisible handcuff mentality of, they gave me this, so I'm going to keep using this. So it's incredibly important that we continue to encourage the empowerment. Is it about rules? Is it about results? I don't believe in a lot of rules, which is really weird for HR. I know. It's scary. I always preach that we keep it between the ditches of moral and legal, and everything else is really up for debate. And how are we going to get the most results out of our people? So with that, I wanted to keep it short and to the point, but leave lots of time for questions. So does anyone have any questions? Nothing?
Thanks.
I love your ideas.
Thank you.
But how do you open up the mindset of your management team to being more open to these sorts of concepts, like kind of like flexible scheduling, or letting people have a little more control over what they do, how they do it, and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I call it my coalition of the willing. And I apologize, but talking all of this makes my mouth really dry. Coalition of the willing. Has anyone ever heard that phrase, if you will? So those are my people that are going to do what I tell them to, basically. For example, we created an animal caregiver training program, not the training farm, but a kind of a step ladder. And you're always going to have that group of managers that say, oh, that sounds like a great idea. I'm happy to try it. And then you're going to have the group of managers that's like, not going to work. Nope. So if we put all those people in a room and we say, here's what we came up with and here's what we want you to go do, your people who are really excited are going to go and they're going to give it everything that they have to go make it work, right? But then your other guys are going to be like, nope, it's not going to work. So then they're going to go make a half-ass attempt and it's not going to work. And they're going to be like, see, told you it wouldn't work, right? Because that's how it always goes. So when I have something big and crazy and weird that I know that people are going to be like, I find my couple of managers that I know will be like, yeah, let's go give it a whirl. So then I go and we build it together and we go give it a whirl. And then they have really great results and everybody's like, well, what's he doing? We're like, well, let us tell you what he's doing. We created this program. They're like, oh, that's scary. I'm like, I know, but look what just happened. So that's kind of how I do some of those big, scary, different mindset things. So I have one farm that's, so we always did this 11 out of 14 day schedule. Does anybody else do that? 11 out of 14. People work every other weekend and they have like a flex day. It is the worst. I hate it. It's the worst thing ever. So I'm trying to get their heads wrapped around, could we please give people 2 days off every week so that they can like go get their hair cut and buy their groceries and do their laundry and sweep their floors and do all the stuff that like humans have to do when they're not at work. So she's working on a schedule where it's kind of like shift work in a restaurant where like this week you have Monday, Tuesday off, the following week you have Wednesday, Thursday, and it just kind of rotates around so that everybody gets 2 days off every week. I'm not having everyone do that because I've got the grumpy grumpersons that are like, it's never going to work. So we're working on it. And now I've got other guys that are calling, asking. I'm like, well, why don't you call Tracy down in Oklahoma? Because she's doing this thing, and she'll tell you how it's working out for her. And so they'll slowly start to do it. So I've got big barges that I have to turn, and I can't turn them in a day. So I have to start with little pieces and go make those work.
Yeah. I liked your ideas and everything, but there's kind of a fine line, too, on the employer side of it. For employees taking advantage, I feel like sometimes of the employer, like constantly, doing those things for them, giving them that shift they want, or letting them, miss for this, or be late for that, or, borrow a vehicle or money, you know what I mean, where you draw the line, where you constantly are bending over to keep people, doing things for them as the employer, to keep them happy, but then where do you draw that line where enough is enough, I've done this for you, when's enough? You know what I mean? When you find that balance, that happy balance, I guess, where you're not constantly bending over backwards for them all the time. I mean, where they're taking advantage of it.
Right. You sound a lot nicer than me. I'd never let them borrow vehicles and money. So, ever. They ask all the time, and I'm like, nope, sorry, not our gig.
And they don't show up. Exactly. They
don't
show up, and then you have
to do it.
Yep, exactly. Then we have to pull their ship. So, I mean, and like I said, it's that fine balance where we let them borrow money to pay something so they'll come to work, or vehicles. I mean, we bend over backwards, I feel like, for our employees. But sometimes, like I said, there's that fine line where they take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So, but yet they're a good employee and you want to keep them happy, so they keep coming back, so you're not pulling that weight, basically. So, that's the act, a lot of, I feel like, people have to deal with too.
Yeah, absolutely. All over the place, right? So you're right. It's a very fine balance. So for example, in a very recent conversation like 2 days ago, and we were working through this scheduling. So I suggested to them, why don't you sit everybody in the room on the team down and talk about this scheduling thing and what would work out the best for each and every one of you And we all work together as a team of 8 people on the farm of how we're going to get this done. And that way, while we're having that conversation, you know, Bob says, these are the best times for me. And we all organize it together. And then everyone's bought in and agreed to it. Now, it's not going to be perfect, and there's always going to be crummy people. And I mean, let's be honest, when people are working for $12 to $14 an hour, they're not always the best decision makers, and they're not always the most reliable, and that's something we have to deal with. But what you'll do is you'll start building a really solid team of people who really appreciate that their job will fit into their life. And as it starts to build, and they start to build that team, that family bond, that peer interaction, then Bob's not going to want to not come in because Sally's then going to have to do it, and Bob doesn't want to do that to Sally. So these things are all things that have to work together, right? And not one of these little cultural items can be put in place and then it all just falls in. And again, we don't ever let people borrow money or trucks, but you know, it is a fine line of, all right, Sue, we worked with you these 3 times. The next time, we're going to have to write you up just because we do feed pigs for a living, and people need to show up because otherwise the pigs don't get fed. Then people come, and that's bad. So it's a balance. But I have found that if you communicate openly and transparently with the teams and kind of let them help build the schedule and work together, that they have a lot more buy-in and a lot more willingness to not leave others behind, if that makes sense. And the more time that people have to have these schedules that fit into their lives, there's less opportunities for things to come up. We found in ours, you know, when we've got people working 11 out of 14, then when they have their one day off and they know there's this long stretch before they're going to have any more days off, they like to call in on that like Monday because they're like, oh, this is going to really suck. I'm going to take one extra day so that it sucks a little less. Sorry. Can we say suck in HR? I say shitty a lot too. I use all the bad words. I'm like a teacher at 4 p.m. It's awful. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So not everybody gets formal training. They kind of inherit this hiring and they're the manager and now they have a team of 15, 20, 50 people. What is like one thing that people really should take into account or go do to learn how to be better people managers?
Yeah, so we would never take the best technician and make them a manager. Does anybody do that? Take the best guy on the farm and then make him the manager when the manager spot comes open? We do it all the time. I'm not afraid to admit it. And it's like the worst thing ever. Because we do it and then we're like, well, you were really great as an animal caregiver. Why are you not so great as a manager? The very first thing that people have to learn how to do is get results through others. So especially when you take that very best person who's the very best day one care person ever, and then you have them go manage other people, they tend to forget to teach the other people how to do day one care. They just go do all the day one care and get it done. So that very first transitional thing that I always coach people and teach people on is getting results through others. As a manager and a leader, you should never go do a task without someone else with you so that someone else is learning that task at the same time. Because if you just do it, then you're in the same position tomorrow and you're in the same position the next day. And then on Saturday, and you want your weekend off because you're the manager now, you don't because no one else knows how to do day one care. So it's always get results through others. Now it's your time to teach.
Is that a course online?
Probably somewhere. If you're just looking up competencies, though, it's getting results through others. Yes, sir.
Whenever you get around and hire a non-management position, how many applicants do you normally have applied for the job that you sift through?
Oh, sometimes 0, sometimes 14.
And that's the problem I think we have, is generally when we get around to hiring somebody, it's more like, is he got a pulse and warm body? I worked in another industry for 34 years and used to years ago when I'd run, an ad for, fill a position, I'd have 15, 16 applicants. You actually had somebody to choose from. We don't hire the right person in the first place. Is there a problem because we don't have that opportunity?
Because there's nobody to choose from.
Yeah, you got nobody to choose from.
Right.
I want to say, if you got 14, tell me your secret how you get people in there. You got somebody to choose from. 'Cause that's the first problem we face. If you can hire the right guy in the first place, you stand a chance of having good results. But if you hire him just because he's got a pulse, this probably is not going to turn out well.
Yeah.
So it's a struggle. I mean, there's like a 2% unemployment rate in where our North Pod, Nebraska farms are, and we could post jobs for 8 months and get 2 applicants. So, you know, in those cases, a lot of times we do use immigration programs that are pretty new for us. We use the TN visa program. But referrals really are the best way to get other employees. And, you know, again, this is a whole big culture piece that we're talking about today. This isn't a 1 and 2 piece thing. So you build that culture on your farm to where people want to show up. They want to help out their fellow coworkers. They are thankful and grateful for this job because they can get Susie off to school in the morning, and there's all these things working well on the farm. Then an opening comes up and people tell their friends. They're like, hey, I've got this really great job. I'd love it if you'd come work with me. And we use referral bonuses too. But you're right, just hiring people off the street a lot of times. I mean, there's always the guy that's applying because he wants to get unemployment again in 30 days, so he's got to go get a job. You know, we deal with those guys. And another surprising place that we've had some really good results is like second chance programs. So people that serve time for non-violent things. So, I mean, if it was violent or theft or anything regarding that stuff. But non-violent crimes we hire out of a second chance program in Nebraska. And that's been really good because people are truthfully thankful that just because they made a major mistake, they still have an opportunity to earn a living. Yeah, I'm sure they do. All of the local probation offices, too, will help put you in contact with some of those people. So, yeah.
How does your referral bonus work? Because that's actually something we've never thought of, but a lot of our employees, if we get them, do come from word of mouth from our employees. They'll say, oh, I have a family member or I have a friend, you know, that's needing a job. So, I mean, how do you do that? How does that work?
Yeah, so our referral bonus is $500. And it gets paid out in 2 payments. I think the first one's either at 30 days or 60 days, and then the second half of it's paid out when the person's been there 6 months. So we make them stick around to get their referral bonus.
You talked about when you were hired on at Maschhoffs, and there was a lot of stuff that wasn't there.
Yeah.
What was that first thing you had to tackle that was like, oh my gosh?
Well, so when I first started, it was for the DOT truck driver. So we had trucks. So our DOT safety program was like non-existent. So we had to write handbooks and driver files and create.
Jump to the HR side.
So, well, that was already relatively established when I went to that piece. But yeah, I mean, we already had policies and. Sorry,
That's okay. No, I wasn't sure.
There's a window manufacturing plant not far from my home that went to implementing a policy that if the employee shows up for a pay period, which is 2 weeks, if they show up on time for a pay period, they get $1 an hour raise. And it's surprising how many don't utilize it. Now, if you can't motivate somebody by paying them more money, how do you get them to show up for work?
Well, because all of those things that I talked about, how many times did I talk about more money? I never talked about more money. Because, again, people aren't as motivated by money today as they were 10 years ago. There's a 4% unemployment rate nationwide. It is not hard to go find a job anywhere. What is hard is to find a job at a place that you really like going to every day. Does everybody in here wake up and say, I really don't want to go to work today? Because I don't ever wake up and say, I don't want to go to work. I mean, sometimes like if I'm just lazy and I don't feel like getting out of bed, but I don't ever wake up and say, I hate my job so much I don't want to go. So what I try to do all day is help my leaders build an environment where people don't wake up and go, I don't want to go. Because they can just go leave and go to McDonald's and make $15 an hour and eat all the fries they want. I would go do that if I could.
What's your experience with training, education, non-job related, just teaching life skills to people? Have you experimented with that any?
Like what kind of life skills?
How to manage money, how to get along with your family members, how to gas up the car the night before.
Yeah. No, we haven't. What I can tell you, and I'm not trying to shut you down, but I sat in a room full of HR professionals. So we've got this pork HR roundtable group that's got members from 15 different large pork production companies, and we get together twice a year. And one person at a large production company who will remain nameless was talking about teaching their team members how to balance a checkbook. And the rest of us kind of sat around and we were like, it seems a little, I mean, nobody uses a checkbook anymore, and people don't balance a checkbook anymore. And some of those things, it's almost condescending of not respecting their intelligence a little bit is kind of the aspect. But then there's a lot of individuals that have never learned that sort of thing. So it's a balance between what's relevant and what people really need to learn and what would help.
You don't see it as a tool to help with retention?
Do you have a specific example?
Well, I just know some of the poultry industry has experimented with that, and I just wondered what your experience is.
Yeah, we haven't done much of that yet. What we've really done is more around leadership coaching and development and personality profiles and learning how to deal with people that are different. So my first boss was what we would call a perfectionist, which means he doesn't like a lot of change and he's very analytical. And I'm really bossy and really sparkly and like this, and he basically wanted to punch me in the throat every day because I was like, "Hi, Daryl," and he was like, "Hi, Erin." And so I had to learn really fast, when I needed something from Daryl doesn't want me to blow into his office and be like, "Hey, Daryl, how's it going?" I need to come in with everything buttoned up and just perfect. So we do a lot of figuring out how to work with each other like that. And then how to pick your teammates to do things, right? So I need somebody who's analytical to fill in all of the number boxes for me because I'm not going to do it. And if I do, I'm bleh. So when I'm working on projects, I always find somebody that can do all those number things or the analytical things or check all the boxes and make sure all my work is right. So we do a lot of stuff like that, of figuring out your own self and what you're good at and what you're not so good at, and how to partner with others that can shore you up. Yes, ma'am.
How do you do activities like that and bring it into a positive mindset so people actually want to participate in figuring out their work style and stuff? Anytime I've suggested it in the past, it's basically stopping a girl.
Stopping a girl. Oh, that's fun. Do you punch them when they say that, really hard, and say, "Did I hit like a girl?" Yeah, so we spent a lot of years getting our leadership and our business to believe in this is important because. So it's not something that you can just throw at people instantly and they'll believe in. But if you remember my coalition of the willing. So find those that might be interested and start with them and start small, and then find your results and produce your results and say, "See how well these guys are working together?" Because Erin can't do jack with those numbers, but she found Daryl to go help her out, and they just did this. Where these two over here are still circling the playground trying to figure out what a number looks like.
So I'm kind of in a unique position. I help HR departments and companies build training curriculum for their companies. How valuable do you think it is to have, after the onboarding phase, having the ongoing training as well?
Absolutely paramount. And talking about that training and coalition of the building, I built this whole program where people could get a raise. All they had to do was go learn stuff, and then they could make more money. And you would be amazed at how many people were not so interested in going to learn stuff to make more money. But I always go back to, one, it has to be a cultural thing. It can't just be a one and done. I mean, you got to live and breathe training. But anybody here been in the military? Anybody active duty? So you get to your first duty station, and they hand you this pile of stuff, and they're like, "Here's your training records. You're in charge. Go." And for the next 3 years, I've got to fill out all these little boxes and go be like, "Hey, can you sign off on this? Because I figured out how to change the oil in that thing." And then I got to go be like, "Hey, he signed off. Can you?" And then I got to go take a test, and that's just the way it was. So I come from that mentality, and then I come to pig farming where it's like, "Hey, he's going to go show you how to run that power washer. Good luck."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "This is crazy. Don't we have somebody who really knows how to run the power washer that we can sign off and say, yeah, you've verified to run the power washer, so that way you don't cut your hand off with the power washer tomorrow?" So I believe that it's very important, but it has to be cultural, and it has to be there's no choice. Here, go. This is your job now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, because I started doing this actually with a large hog company, and I did it for them privately. And we actually saw a huge, first off, we were hiring better quality employees just because during our orientation we were able to give them a visual aid of what they would be doing if they got hired. So you're hiring better quality employees to start with, but then during the onboarding, we would pair each one of the videos or the training courses along with what they were learning on the farm. So they got each piece, and it wasn't all at once, and it wasn't just a handbook throwing at them. And it worked really well for us, but I've seen some of the companies don't necessarily understand how important it is to make that contact and make sure that they understand that your culture is vital to their existence at your company,
So we talked about having an empowered team. They can't be empowered if they don't know anything. Who has been given a project that you didn't really know what to do? Anybody? They're like, go do this thing, and you're like, okay. How empowered do you feel, right? You kind of feel like a fish flopping around, and you don't even know where to start, and you've got writer's block for the first 3 pages, and then you slowly but surely start to go figure it out. Versus, have you ever been given a project that you know exactly what to go do, and you're like, all right, and you've got a plan, you figure it all out, you get your resources and your people, and you start working on it. That's the difference between feeling empowered and trained and knowledgeable versus, no, those are good opportunities for us to go learn. But do you want your caregivers to feel that way about every task that they're given every day of, I don't even know what to do? So it's really important to just get them trained.
You mentioned the pork producers HR group. Mm-hmm. Is that a group that publishes stuff that is helpful? Like, is there a blog? They have like speakers?
No. We're pretty janky. But we all hang out together and talk about stuff. Yeah. They have me lead things, if that tells you how janky it is. SHRM, Society for Human Resources, is a really good resource that has a lot of I go steal stuff from there all the time. Any other questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit ago about pulling in workers from other areas, specifically, other countries. Kind of give us like the first 3 steps of that process, because I feel like it's overwhelming for a lot of producers, and especially in the culture that we're in right now. So what are kind of like those first early initial steps from even considering that's a possibility for your operation?
Find a partner. So shameless plug, we just signed with Envoy. I've been really happy with them. Some of my teammates, I guess they need more than I do because they've been not as happy as I am, but I'm really happy with it. So in the past, it's been person who speaks Spanish sends me an email. I send it to someone to see what it said. They send it back to me. I tell them what I want to say back. They send it back to them. I send it to Ogletree Deacons. Ogletree Deacon, like it's this tangled web of nonsense, right? So Envoy, shameless plug, if you call them, tell them I told you so that they owe me like 10% commission. But they've got this beautiful platform where everyone has a dashboard. The employer has a dashboard. A person goes to apply. It's in English or Spanish. They upload all their documents right there. They've got lawyers on site, and their legal team does everything for you. And it costs the same amount of money as it cost us to use Ogletree Deacons, which, shameless plug for them too. They're really great. It was just a complicated process. So, but Envoy, I'm sure there's other companies like them. I just really liked those folks. They do it all for you, and it's really easy, and it's pretty quick. It's like $1,200 to get a person here for a year. And then after a year, they have to go like tag base, and then they can come back. That's TN, the TN visa. TNs are the way to go. You can only hire them from Mexico or Canada. It's part of the NAFTA trade agreement. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I hope this was helpful.